It says that at the bottom. So ax squared plus bx plus c, trinomial factoring. All right. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to put into algebra what we've already done with the algebra tiles. All right. So first things first, we still have our two methods. So we still have the AC method and we still have the reverse box method. So the AC method steps are still the same. So our two methods are AC method, which is just a fancy version of grouping. And we also have the reverse box method, which is just more of a visual of the AC method. Both of these, you need to use big X. So the difference between the last big X and this one is that this time around, you want A times C on top and your B value on the bottom. And you're still looking for two terms that multiply to A times C, but add to B. All right. So again, we're specifically looking at trinomials where the A value is greater than 1. All right. So in my opinion, depending on what you're more comfortable with, I kind of like the reverse box method better for this, but AC method works as well. Because sometimes the reverse box method, you kind of have to do a lot of context clues and implying a little bit. All right. So let's try some examples here. So I'll do one with reverse box, the other with AC. So we'll do example 9 with reverse box. All right. So as always, we start by labeling our polynomial A, B, C. So just go down the line. A, B, C. All right. Then we're doing our big X off to the side. This will give us our two factors. So again, we have A times C at the top and B at the bottom. And we're looking for two terms that multiply to give us this number, but add to give us this number. All right. So what's A times C? So A times C up here, what's that equal to number-wise? What's my A value? 3y squared, or in this case, just the 3. We only care about the number. What's my C value? Not just 15, but negative 15. So we're doing 3 times negative 15, which is equal to what? So negative 45, guys. If you don't know that, use a calculator. So we're going to put negative 45 here. So this is where it differs from what we've been learning. We don't just put the negative 15. We have to account for this 3 in the front. All right. Now, the bottom is still just your B value. So what's my B value? 4y, and we're in this case just the 4. Remember, when we're doing big X, we only really care about the numbers. So I now need to find factors of negative 45 that add to 4. Now, since our product is negative, that means that our two factors are going to have what type of signs? So if our product or multiplication results in a negative number, what are going to be the signs of my two factors? Negative and a positive. So one of them is going to be negative. The other one's going to be positive. We don't know what they are yet. So let's just start listing factors of 45. So what's one factor of 45? Or set a factor? 1 and 45. What's another one? 5 and 9. 3 and 15, because that's the one we did earlier. Which set could result, if one was positive and one was negative, a positive 4 when you add them together? 5 and 9. Now, since the 4 is positive, which number has to be the negative one? The 5. So this will be negative 5. So we're going to have negative 5 here and 9 here. And remember, this is where you might want to put like the variable after it, just so you remember that you're replacing the 4y here with those two values. All right. Now I'm going to draw my box. So how I'm going to draw my box is, remember, your a value always goes in the top left corner. So 3y squared. Your constant goes in the bottom right, so negative 15. And then you can put these two terms in either of the available spots. So negative 5y I'm going to put here, and 9y I'm going to put here. And again, it doesn't matter where you put those two, as long as they're within that diagonal. Now, here's where it gets a little bit, you got to infer a little bit. So, if I want 3y squared, first off, what times what is the only way to get 3? 1 and 3. All right. And then how do we get y squared? Y times y. So we're probably going to do y times 3y somewhere for that box. However, we need to kind of figure out where that will go. So let me ask you this. The 3y is where you need to figure out the placement. And the way you figure out the placement is the other term in either the column or the row that they share should be a multiple of 3. All right. So let's say I put the 3y here. And you don't need to write this down just yet. So let's say I put the 3y here. Is there any whole number that I can multiply 3y to get negative 5y? Multiply. Is 5 a factor of 3? No. Or a multiple of 3, I should say. So that's probably not the placement for 3y. What about here? So, is there any number I can multiply to 3y to get 9y? What number? 3. So that's going to be the placement of our 3y, and then the y goes in the other spot. Now, we already said that 3y times 3, or positive 3, gives us the 9y. Now, y times what gives you negative 5y? Negative 5. So this now becomes, our two factors are here and here, so this now becomes 3y minus 5 times y plus 3. So see what I mean when I say that you kind of have to think about it a little bit? You definitely want, heads up guys, you definitely want some multiples. Make sure that the other term in either the row or column that they share with that number times y is a multiple of that number. If not, the placement wouldn't make sense. Now, on the other hand, if we do AC method, so let's look at example 10. So, AC method, still start with our big X, A, B, C. So remember, we got to do A times C first, which, what's my A value? 2. What's my C value? 3. So 2 times 3 is what? 6. So 6 is going to go up here. What goes in the bottom? -7. Remember to include the sign. So we need 2 factors of 6 that will add to give us -7. Now, since the 6 is positive, that means we have 2 of the same signs. All right. Are those signs going to be positive or negative? Negative. Why? Yeah. It's right there at that desk. Mm-hmm. You can just leave the stuff that's on the desk on the desk. All right. So that means both of them are going to be negative because we're adding to get a negative number. So let's list factors of 6. What's one factor of 6? 1 and 6. What's another factor? Someone else. 2 and 3. Which set could potentially add up to 7? 1 and 6. And they both got to be negative. So -1, -6. And again, I'm going to stick the y after it just so I know they're there. Or x in this case. Now I'm going to take these two and rewrite my expression, but replacing the -7x. So I get 2x squared minus x, or 1x, minus 6x plus 3. And then we factor by grouping. So remember, you draw your line. Make sure you group the signs together still. So that negative needs to stay with the -6x. Now, what's the GCF of my first group? So numerically, 2 and 1, is there a GCF besides 1 there? No. What about x squared and x? What do they share? Just a singular x. So, divide both my terms by x. 2x squared divided by x is what? 2x. What's -x divided by x? Not x. What's anything divided by itself? 1. And then we throw a negative in front of it. So this would be -1. What's the GCF of that second group? 3. So if we pull a 3 out, divide both these by 3, we would get -2x plus 1. Now, remember what I said about grouping. What's the most important thing about grouping to know if we did it correctly? Give you a hint. It has to do with these. The bubbles got to match. Do they match exactly? No. How can I change that second bubble to look like the first? Take a negative out as well. So I'm going to throw a -3 out here. So this becomes a +2. And this becomes a -1. So now they match. And then you do the bring down method. So you bring down the two GCFs into one bubble, so x minus 3. And you bring down one of the like bubbles, so 2x minus 1. And that's our polynomial factored. Any questions on that one? All right. Now, I want you guys to now look at example 11. There's one thing that's very, very important whenever you are factoring. You want your first term to be positive. So make a note of it somewhere. First term, so whatever's connected to the x squared or the variable squared, should be positive. And if it's not, factor a negative, whether that be -1 or a negative GCF. So in this case, I'm going to take out a -1 on the outside, and I'm going to divide all these terms by -1. So I basically just switch the signs. So 5m squared minus 6m plus 1. Because what happens is that if that value is not negative, it makes it so much easier. All right. So all I did was factor out a -1, and so I could switch all the signs. You can definitely do that. Now I can just factor what's inside my bubble. All right. So same method, A, B, and C. And just to save some time, now I'm going to teach you guys another method. This one's called snowflake. Now with snowflake, it's just like big X, except you add one extra line. So your factors would go down here. Yeah. And then up top, you're just going to put, I'm blanking, your original A value, so 5m. All right, so we're putting our original A value. So you put your A value up top and whatever the variable is. So in this case, it's an M, so we're just going to put an M. Now, we still put A times C on top, so 5 times 1, that's 5. Yeah, AM. And then on the bottom, we put the -6. So the only factors of 5 that would work, because 5 only has one factor set, and that's 1 and -5. Which, if both of these are negative, does that not add to -6? Yes, no, maybe? Yes. So I'm going to put -1 here, -5 here. Now, here's what you got to do next. These are now fractions. And what do we have to always have with fractions? They need to be what? I always want my fractions what? Simplified. So let me ask you this. 5m over -1, does that simplify anymore? No. What about 5m over -5? How can I simplify that? What do they both have in common? 5. So I can divide the top and the bottom by 5. So that would give me m over -1. And then guess what? These are your two factors. So that would be 5m minus 1 times m minus 1. So snowflake is just like a big version of big X, but you have your factors in there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Only thing that you have to remember to do is simplify. So you got to simplify if needed. So again, if you don't like snowflake, I'm just showing you another method. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it. You can still use reverse box. You can still use AC. All right. Oh, one more thing I forgot is if you ever take a GCF out, you always got to bring it down and put it in the front. So this is actually -1 times 5m minus 1 times n minus 1. Now it's factored. So you always bring down an GCF. All right, so we're going to stop right there for today because we only got about 10 minutes left of class. So you guys should now be able to finish that delta math that I assigned the other day.